Welcome to the debate. Imagine a person who controls the entire emotional climate of your house,
Mm-hmm.
who dictates your schedule and isolates you from your friends, but, and this is the key, not by yelling, right? Not by throwing things, but with a well-timed, tragic sigh.
Yes. It is the ultimate invisible trap because you don't see the threat coming. It's wearing a mask of vulnerability.
Exactly. You think you're helping a victim, right? Someone who is just shy, depressed, or maybe just really unlucky.
Right. The red flags just look like cries for help.
Yeah, but in reality, you are slowly being drained by someone extracting endless pity and, honestly, total submission from you.
Today, we are decoding the covert, or vulnerable narcissist. We're digging into recent clinical frameworks, relational psychology, and the hard data on perfectionism to answer one central question.
Right, which is this. Is covert narcissism best understood as a calculated, manipulative strategy to secure power through the guise of victimhood?
Or is it fundamentally a tragic, genuine psychological collapse? One that's driven by toxic shame and a really profound emotional deficit.
I will be arguing that vulnerable narcissism is a highly strategic, covert manifestation of grandiosity and entitlement. It is, frankly, a predatory system of control.
And I'll be arguing that it is primarily a reactive, fragile coping mechanism. It's rooted in severe, genuine internal distress. And what looks like calculation is actually the disorganized panic of a broken psychic structure.
Look, when I analyze the behavioral profile of the covert narcissist, I see grandiosity in a different disguise. It's really that simple.
A disguise, sure, but a very painful one for them.
I get that, but the clinical texts make this entirely clear. These individuals harbor the exact same deep entitlement, the same envy, and the same absolute need for dominance as your classic, loud, overt narcissist.
They just have a totally different way of expressing it.
Right. Because they lack the charisma or, frankly, the courage to demand the spotlight directly, they adapt. They express their entitlement through passive-aggressive manipulation, weaponized incompetence, and chronic victimhood.
I hear the behavioral angle you're taking, but you are looking at their behavior and seeing a chess grandmaster.
Because the behavior is highly effective.
Effective, yes. But that framing attributes far too much mastermind intentionality to what is biologically and psychologically a constant state of internal panic.
Okay, explain the panic then.
Well, if we look at the schema therapy perspective from the source material, and for anyone unfamiliar, schema therapy essentially looks at how the brain maps out deeply ingrained dysfunctional patterns from childhood trauma. Vulnerable narcissism is a desperate coping mode.
Mapped over toxic shame, right?
Exactly. It is mapped over a core of toxic shame. The severe neuroticism, the paralyzing social anxiety, the hypersensitivity to criticism. These are real agonizing lived experiences.
I don't doubt they feel anxiety, but
Their behavior is a blind, disorganized survival mechanism. They aren't coldly plotting to destroy their partners.
wait, but look at how that panic manifests interpersonally. Let's talk about the actual nature of this victim persona.
Okay, let's do it.
I assert that the covert narcissist's victimhood is actively weaponized to control others. The material explicitly details these really subtle tactics. Take the concept of dog whistles.
Right, the subtle cues.
Yeah, this is abuse occurring in plain sight. It's engineered to be invisible to everyone but the victim.
Give an example of how that actually plays out in a relationship.
Okay, say you're at a charity dinner. You mention a personal achievement to mutual friends. The covert narcissist doesn't yell or insult you. They just let out this highly specific, subtle sigh.
Oof, yeah. Or a look.
Or a look. Or they offer a backhanded compliment wrapped in concern. Something like, it's so great how you prioritize your career over everything else. I could never do that.
Wow. Yeah, that stings.
To the outside world, they look innocent, even supportive. But to the partner, it is a targeted strike. It's a micro-insult designed to isolate you and make them the martyr.
It is isolating, absolutely.
That requires an acute awareness of social dynamics. You don't do that by accident. That requires calculation.
See, assuming calculation implies a level of self-awareness and, frankly, executive function that the covert narcissist simply lacks in those exact moments.
You think they don't know what they're doing when they drop a line like that?
The literature shows us that vulnerable narcissists have a remarkably low perceived ability to seem perfect. When reality fails to match their entitled self-view, like when you succeed at that dinner party and they feel eclipsed, they don't sit back and concoct a Machiavellian plot to take you down.
Then what are they doing?
They experience what the texts call disintegrative anxiety.
Which means what exactly in that moment at the table?
It means the feeling that their core identity is literally falling apart. It's like psychological quicksand. They are suddenly trapped in bitter rumination and hypervigilant shame.
So the sigh is just, what, an involuntary reflex?
Yes. When they issue that sigh or that backhanded compliment, it is a knee-jerk defense mechanism against their own disintegrative anxiety. They are projecting their internal inadequacy outward to stabilize themselves. It's an automatic reflex, not some plotted strategy.
Okay, I hear that, but think of their vulnerability as a Trojan horse.
A Trojan horse?
Yes. The depression, the shyness, the whole poor me routine, that is just the wooden horse. But the hostile entitlement hiding inside is what actually breaches the partner's boundaries.
That's a very dark way to view someone's suffering.
But it's accurate. They use that wooden horse to bypass your defenses because you are an empathetic person. You want to help. You lean in. You open the gates.
And then what?
And the exact moment you do, they unload the guilt trips, the covert gaslighting, and the silent treatments. The partner is suddenly left organizing their entire life around not upsetting this quote-unquote fragile person.
It's a terrible dynamic, yes.
That isn't just a reflex. That is coercive control.
But viewing that as a Trojan horse completely ignores the lethality of their internal distress. This isn't just some wooden construct built for deception. It is a lived, agonizing reality.
I'm not saying the depression is entirely faked, but
We have to look at the hard data on perfectionism, which is a core engine of pathology. The meta-analytic review, covering over 50 years of research on the perfectionism-suicide relationship, is definitive here.
you're talking about the data specifically on socially prescribed perfectionism, right?
Exactly. The hallmarks of the vulnerable narcissist are socially prescribed perfectionism, the belief that others demand absolute perfection from them, combined with an intense feeling of being fundamentally incapable of achieving it.
Right.
The data shows this specific combination predicts longitudinal increases in suicidal ideation. This proves that depression isn't just a fake performance for sympathy. It is a profound internal agony.
I acknowledge the internal agony.
When they experience an achievement-related setback, their fragile self-esteem collapses, triggering intense hopelessness. To call it a strategy dismisses the clinical reality that they are suffering from an unlivable self.
I'm not denying the presence of distress, but I am fundamentally challenging how that distress is utilized in the relationship.
Utilized?
Yes, utilized. We have to look at the phenomenon called narcissistic self-negativity.
Ah, the paradox of the empowered victim.
Precisely. By declaring, I am a failure or I am the worst, the narcissist is actually adopting an empowering, protective identity.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive to most people.
Right. How is self-hatred empowering? Because it dictates the terms of the relationship. If I am the ultimate victim, if I am already hating myself more than you ever could, it justifies my total avoidance of responsibility.
It creates a wall.
It creates a dynamic where no one can ask anything of me because I am already suffering so much. The self-negativity is a shield against accountability.
The suffering is real, though. It isn't a fabricated shield.
Then explain the timing to me.
The timing?
Yeah. If the depression is entirely a genuine collapse, why is it so consistently and precisely deployed at the exact moment a partner asks for accountability?
Well, this is exactly what trips victims up. You ask a covert narcissist to help out more around the house, or you express that your feelings were hurt by one of those micro insults we talked about, and instantly they collapse.
Because they feel attacked. But listen to what they say. I guess I'm just a monster. I can't do anything right. I should just leave so you can be happy. That's not clinical depression. That is weaponized guilt.
Oh my God, it is so hard for the partner to hear that.
It forces the victim to immediately drop their boundary and start comforting the abuser. The timing is far too perfect to be just a blind collapse.
I push back on that. The timing is precise because a request for accountability is experienced by them as a devastating narcissistic injury.
Just asking them to do the dishes is an injury?
Yes, you are applying a healthy neurotypical standard of emotional regulation to a severely disordered psyche. When you ask them for accountability, you aren't just making a request, you are holding up a mirror to their imperfection.
And they can't handle the reflection.
Exactly. For a vulnerable narcissist, experiencing imperfection triggers acute shame. The text notes they frequently employ compulsive rituals as a desperate coping mechanism to restore safety.
So the guilt trip is a ritual?
Their collapse isn't a tactic pulled from a playbook to make you do the dishes. It is an emotional flash flood.
But the outcome is always that the victim ends up doing the emotional labor every single time.
Yes, but the mechanism matters. They view seeking help or being corrected as deeply humiliating. So when you confront them, they don't systematically calculate how to manipulate you, they regress.
Regression over a minor critique?
The schema therapy model explains the mechanics of this perfectly. When criticized, they flip into what's called a vulnerable child mode, where they are entirely overwhelmed by toxic shame.
Or they just shut down.
Right. They flip into an avoided protector mode to escape the pain of your criticism by shutting down. It destroys the partner, absolutely. But the collapse is authentic. It is an inability to process shame, not a calculated maneuver.
Okay, well, let's look at exactly how it destroys the partner then, because if their internal state is essentially a continuous panic attack, as you say, the sheer collateral damage that panic inflicts on the partner's physical body is staggering.
It really is. The somatic toll is huge.
The somatic and psychological destruction of the victim is the clearest evidence of the predatory nature of this dynamic. The texts detail the chronic cognitive dissonance the victim endures.
The brain basically struggling to reconcile two completely different realities.
Exactly. The victim's brain is literally short-circuiting trying to reconcile the public persona of this person, maybe they are a communal narcissist, beloved by everyone, the perfect volunteer, with the cruel, emotionally neglectful person behind closed doors.
It's a total mind bender.
And we need to explain the mechanism of what that dissonance does to the body. You can't just think your way out of it. The partner's amygdala is hijacked.
Because they are living with a constant, unpredictable threat.
Yes, their body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. This chronic fight or flight state shuts down the vagus nerve, which directly controls digestion and immune response. This is exactly why victims develop severe cardiovascular issues, IBS, and autoimmune flare-ups.
The body keeps the score.
Right. They are stuck in a trauma-induced fawn response. They are constantly appeasing the abuser just to survive the silent treatments.
Which is exhausting.
Reducing a healthy, functioning human being into a hyper-vigilant, isolated shell doesn't happen by accident. You do not inflict that level of systemic neurological damage without a sustained, coercive, emotional manipulation.
I hear you.
It's akin to the weaponized goodness we see in communal narcissists. It is a highly effective subjugation of another human being.
The physiological destruction of the partner is catastrophic. As a clinician, I validate every single symptom you just listed.
It's a brutal reality.
The chronic flooding of stress hormones, the loss of the somatic self, meaning the victim literally loses their physical connection to their own body's signals. It is a living nightmare. But we must sharply distinguish this from the sadistic, predatory nature of a malignant narcissist.
Why draw that line, though? The outcome for the victim's nervous system is practically the exact same.
Because the why dictates how we understand the pathology and, crucially, how victims can ultimately heal from it. A malignant narcissist operates with ecosyntonic sadism.
Meaning they enjoy it.
Exactly. Their cruelty aligns perfectly with their self-image. They experience genuine pleasure in causing pain and watching you suffer. They want you to fear them.
And the covert narcissist doesn't?
No. The destruction in a covert dynamic stems from what the literature calls neglectful narcissism. It is a profound absence of presence. They simply do not see the partner as a separate, feeling individual.
So they're just indifferent? That almost sounds too passive.
It's deeper than indifference. The partner is destroyed by the narcissist's emotional vacuum. It's a relentless, black hole need for validation and an absolute inability to focus on anything outside their own pain.
But it still destroys the partner.
It is the devastation of severe neglect and extreme self-absorption, not a sadistic pleasure in causing pain. The abuser's reputation becomes a cage for the victim, yes, but the narcissist built that reputation to shield their own shame, not specifically to torture their spouse.
I challenge that entirely because you are minimizing the active nature of their aggression. You call it an emotional vacuum, which sounds passive, but it's highly directed.
How so?
Let's look at the communal narcissist subtype mentioned in the material. When their ego is threatened, they don't just neglect you. They use their goodness as a weapon.
Okay, the smear campaigns.
Yes. They run preemptive smear campaigns. They subtly plant seeds of doubt about the victim's character to mutual friends or community leaders. They'll say something like, I'm just so exhausted trying to hold everything together. I'm really worried about my spouse's mental health lately. They've been so erratic.
Oof. Which isolates the partner completely.
Exactly. They isolate the partner through the community's adoration of the abuser. The community rallies around the narcissist, and the victim is suddenly entirely alone, doubting their own sanity.
It's a terrifying position to be in.
That is not just a passive absence of empathy. That is an active, aggressive dismantling of the victim's social support system to protect their own fragile ego. That is the definition of predatory behavior.
It is highly destructive, defensive behavior. But think about the underlying mechanics here. A predator hunts for sport or sustenance. I look at the covert narcissist and I see someone who is drowning.
Drowning?
Yes, they are drowning in an ocean of toxic shame and disintegrative anxiety. And in their panic, they are pulling their partner underwater to use them as a flotation device.
But they are still pulling the partner underwater.
Yes, and it absolutely feels like a deliberate attack to the person being drowned. The resulting trauma bond is incredibly hard to break because the victim keeps chasing the dopamine hit of a temporary reconciliation, hoping the narcissist will finally learn to swim.
Which they usually don't.
But the narcissist's primary goal isn't murder. It's their own psychic survival. They lack effective empathy. They can't physically feel the emotional resonance of your pain, so they don't care that they are drowning you. But their motive is avoiding their own annihilating shame, not orchestrating your demise.
Which brings us right back to the behavioral reality. Regardless of the internal pain involved, regardless of whether they are drowning or hunting, covert narcissism operates as a highly effective, manipulative system of control.
I don't disagree that it controls the victim.
Right? They exploit the empathy of their partners. They weaponize vulnerability to secure their own narcissistic supply. They hide their entitlement behind a mask of depression or extreme helpfulness. And the moment you challenge them, they unleash a word salad of deflections, passive-aggressive hostility, and guilt trips that shatter the victim's reality. The internal distress, the toxic shame, it doesn't negate the fact that they function as emotional predators in intimate relationships.
And my summary position remains that while the interpersonal damage is truly catastrophic, leaving victims with severe betrayal trauma, cognitive dissonance, and serious somatic illness, labeling the behavior as calculated predation obscures the clinical reality.
Even with the smear campaigns?
Yes, because the 50 years of research on perfectionism and suicide, the schema therapy frameworks, the empirical data on their profound psychic fragility, it all points to a desperate, disorganized survival strategy.
It's definitely a pathology.
They are trapped in a genuine despair. It is a severe personality pathology, a tragic inability to relate to the world in a healthy way, not a calculated mastermind plot.
Well, we do reach a firm point of convergence, though.
Which is?
The dynamic they create, whether it stems from predatory calculation or disorganized panic, result in profound cognitive dissonance for the partner.
Oh, absolutely. It is one of the most confusing, isolating, and damaging psychological environments a human being can endure.
Without a doubt.
The constant juxtaposition of the public saint and the private ghost. Or, the helpless victim who is simultaneously a demanding tyrant. It literally traps the partner's nervous system in a state of suspended terror.
And I think there is immense value in holding both of these analytical lenses simultaneously.
I agree.
Because if you only look at the manipulative mechanics and the behavioral outcome, you miss the clinical pathology. You miss the neurobiology of their shame.
and you miss why the Trojan horse was built in the first place.
And conversely, if you only look at their internal agony and the toxic shame driving them, you're risk enabling the abuse.
Exactly.
Recognizing the manipulative mechanics, identifying the dog whistles, and understanding the concept of weaponized incompetence. It's absolutely essential for validating the victim's reality and protecting their sanity. You cannot heal if you don't know what you're fighting.
There is a vast amount more to explore in this source material, particularly when we dive deeper into clinical interventions like schema therapy.
Right, and how it attempts to reach that vulnerable child beneath the toxic armor, assuming the individual is even willing to seek treatment.
Which is a whole other debate.
It is a field that is constantly evolving as we understand more about the intersection of childhood trauma, neurobiology, and personality development.
We leave the final verdict to you, the listener. The next time you encounter someone whose suffering seems to mysteriously control the entire room, whose depression always perfectly aligns with avoiding responsibility, you have to ask yourself,
Are you looking at a tragic psychological collapse?
or are you just staring at the wooden belly of a Trojan horse?